Big news from the Vatican. Pope Francis has made some major moves. First, he picked Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, a 62-year-old from the Philippines, to lead the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples. That's a fancy way of saying he's now in charge of spreading the Catholic faith around the world. Tagle is taking over from Cardinal Fernando Filoni, who ran the show for 8 years. Oh, and just yesterday, Pope Francis gave Filoni a new gig as the Grand Master of the Order of the Holy Sepulchre. Pretty cool, right? But hold on to your hats. There's more. In a jaw-dropping twist, Pope Francis announced he's stepping down as Pope. Yep, you heard that right. After years of shaking things up with his kindness, passion for fairness, and love for the planet, he's calling it a day. His time as Pope has been a wild ride, full of heart and big changes, and now the world's wondering what's next for the Catholic Church. So, who's stepping into his shoes? None other than Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, the Archbishop of Manila. This guy's a rock star, known for helping the poor, chatting with people of other faiths, and bringing fresh ideas to the table. He's ready to carry on Pope Francis's amazing work while guiding the Church into the future. Tagle's no stranger to evangelization either. He's been part of 2 huge church meetings, called synods, about sharing the faith. One in 2012 and another last year about young people. Now, let's talk about Pope Francis's incredible legacy. Since he became Pope in 2013, he's been a game changer. He ditched the fancy Pope Palace for a simple guest house, drove a modest car, and wore plain clothes, showing he's all about humility and staying connected to regular folks. But he didn't stop there. He faced tough issues like the Church's abuse scandals head-on, saying sorry and pushing for honesty and accountability. Pope Francis also became a loud voice for the poor, immigrants, and our planet. In 2015, he dropped Laudato Si, a letter to the world about saving the environment and helping those hit hardest by climate change. It wasn't just for Catholics. It got everyone talking about taking care of Earth. Plus, he worked hard to bring people of different religions, like Muslims and Jews, closer together. In short, Pope Francis has been a humble, bold, and inspiring leader. Now, with Cardinal Tagle stepping up, the Church is in for an exciting new chapter. Pope Francis left behind a powerful message. In a world pulling apart, religions need to get along. It's not just a nice idea, it's a must. His big-picture thinking made him a leader who brought people together, no matter their faith, all for peace and teamwork. Now, as the world reels from his resignation, everyone's wondering who'll take his place. Say hello to Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle from the Philippines. Known for his charm, big heart, and down-to-earth vibe, he's been chosen as the new pope. It's a huge moment for the Catholic Church, a mix of keeping things going and shaking things up. Born in 1957, Tagle's path to the top shows his love for fairness, his smarts about faith, and his knack for connecting with everyone from all walks of life. From the start as a priest, Tagle got his hands dirty helping the poor and forgotten in the Philippines. His real caring approach got him noticed fast. One of his coolest wins? Leading Caritas Internationalis, the Church's worldwide charity squad. Back in 2012, Pope Benedict XVI made him a cardinal, spotting his passion for reaching out to those on the edges. Last year, when Pope Francis visited Manila, Tagle summed it up perfectly. Every Filipino wants to go with you, not to Rome, but to the peripheries. Through stuff like the Share the Journey campaign, he's shone a spotlight on migrants and refugees, showing the world how war, poverty, and climate change hit the hardest. He's visited refugee camps, chatted with people who've lost everything, and made sure their voices get heard. Proof of his huge heart. Tagle's style is all about humility, with a dash of influence. Whether he's hanging out in slums or talking faith with big shots from other religions, he lives out the idea of serving others. He's got a gift for tackling tricky topics, faith or society, with care, earning him fans inside and outside the church. Now, as Pope Tagle steps up, the church is at a turning point. Catholics are split. Some want to stick to the old ways, others are pushing for change. Tagle's a lot like Francis, which might ruffle some traditional feathers. His big challenge? Bringing everyone together, finding peace in the chaos, and tackling today's tough issues. With his charm, deep faith, and people skills, he's got what it takes to unite folks. But the big question is, can he steer the church into a fresh, strong future? Big things are happening. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle from Manila is gearing up for a special moment. Pope Francis is coming to visit his home country, the Philippines. Cardinal Tagle is no stranger to making waves. With his big heart, bold ideas, and fierce passion for fairness, he's the perfect guy to lead the Catholic Church into its next chapter. He's got a knack for connecting with everyone, rich, poor, young, old, and he truly gets what the church is all about. He's like a bright light for a church that's been through some tough times. But let's be real. The job ahead isn't a walk in the park. Tagle's got to bring together a church that's split down the middle. It'll take some clever moves and gutsy calls. Plus, he's facing some huge global questions. What's the role of women in the church? How do we welcome LGBTQ+ folks? And how do we fix the mess of clerical abuse? The world's watching, and the pressure's on. So, how does a new pope get picked? It's a sacred hush-hush tradition. A group of top church leaders, called the College of Cardinals, locks themselves in the Sistine Chapel for something called a conclave. They pray, think hard, and vote until they choose the next pope. It's not just paperwork, it's a big, meaningful moment where they decide the church's future. One thing that makes Tagle special, he's all about inculturation. That's a fancy word for mixing church teachings with local vibes, like using African drums or Asian art in worship. It's made the church feel more like home for people in places like Africa and Asia, without losing its core. Tagle's dream is a church that's open, fair, and ready to tackle today's big issues. He once told a story about visiting a refugee camp. Not everyone there was Christian, but they asked him, "You're different from us. Why are you helping?" His answer? That's just what Christians do. His leadership is all about kindness, bringing people together, and standing up for the world's underdogs. As he gets ready to step up as Pope, Tagle's got a vision that mixes old-school faith with new-school progress. A church that really gets what people are going through. Now, about Pope Francis stepping down, it's a history-making moment. His resignation hit like a thunderbolt. Known for his warmth, simple life, and game-changing ideas, he shook things up big time. Quitting wasn't just a practical choice. It was his way of saying, it's time for someone new to take the wheel. Since 2013, as the 266th Pope, he rewrote the rulebook on being a leader, focusing on humility, justice, and saving the planet. His legacy? It's huge, and it's going to keep inspiring people as Tagle takes over. Pope Francis was all about reaching out to people who often get overlooked, the poor, the struggling, the forgotten. He lived out mercy, peace, and unity every day. When he decided to step down during the Jubilee of Hope, a special time for renewal and soul-searching, it didn't feel random. It was like a gentle nudge to the church, saying, "Hey, let's refocus on helping everyone, especially when times get tough." Turns out, he'd planned for this possibility from the start. Early in his time as Pope, he wrote a letter saying he'd quit if serious health problems stopped him from doing his job properly. Smart move. One of the coolest things about Pope Francis? He never stopped fighting for fairness. He spoke up for the poor, stood by the oppressed, and tackled huge issues like poverty, people forced to flee their homes, and climate change. His words didn't just stay in the church, they sparked conversations everywhere, even influencing big global decisions. His big environmental win was Laudato Si', a letter he wrote in 2015 that said, "We've got to take care of our planet." It wasn't just about trees and rivers, it was a heart and soul call to action. People loved it. Environmentalists, leaders, and everyday folks all cheered him on. He also had a soft spot for refugees. In a world where some want to shut doors, Francis said, "No way. Let's show them kindness and respect." He didn't just talk the talk. He set up Vatican programs and teamed up with groups to help displaced people directly. You might remember him visiting slums, hugging the poor, or even washing prisoners' feet. Those weren't just photo ops. They were his way of saying, "The church belongs out there, with the people who need it most." Pope Francis shook things up as a leader, too. He didn't want all the power stuck at the top in the Vatican. Instead, he thought regular folks, everyday church members, should have a say. That was a big change from the old days when only the bigwigs called the shots. He set up teams with all kinds of people, including women, to help make decisions. His vibe? You're not just here to listen, you're here to help run the show. Oh, and get this. He even gave the green light for priests to offer blessings in a groundbreaking new way. Pope Francis wanted a church where everyone's in it together, tackling tough stuff and living out their faith, side by side. Pope Francis didn't mess around when it came to tackling sexual abuse in the church. He rolled out new rules to make things more open and hold people accountable, especially the higher-ups. He set up clear ways to deal with abuse cases and made sure bishops couldn't just sweep things under the rug. It was a big deal, and it showed he meant business. In another huge move, he said Catholic priests can now bless same-sex couples. Today, he changed the Vatican's rules, saying folks looking for God's love shouldn't have to pass some big moral test first. This was all about rebuilding trust in the church after some tough years. Francis wasn't afraid to call out the clergy on abuse and power trips. With his Jesuit background, think sharp leadership and deep faith, he pushed for real change, even if it stirred up some drama. Some folks in the church weren't thrilled. They liked the old ways and questioned his plans. But Francis stuck to his guns, mixing tough justice with a big dose of kindness, aiming to heal wounds while fixing what was broken. He didn't stop there, though. Pope Francis wanted the church to get its house in order, starting with the Vatican's money matters. He cracked down on shady stuff, like corruption at the Vatican Bank. Yep, there was even a guy, Monsignor Nunzio Scarano, caught trying to sneak 20 million euros from Switzerland to Italy. Francis brought in tighter rules to make sure the church's cash was used for good, like helping people, not lining pockets. It was all about keeping the church true to its mission. And wow, did he make waves worldwide. Pope Francis was huge on bringing people together, no matter their religion. He thought kindness, peace, and fairness could connect everyone, even in a world full of arguments. One of his proudest moments? Visiting the United Arab Emirates in 2019 and signing a peace pact with a top Muslim leader. It wasn't just for show, It was a real push for understanding in a tricky part of the world. He also worked hard to buddy up with other Christians, like Orthodox and Protestant folks, fixing old rifts and focusing on what they all share. It was his way of saying, "Hey, we're in this together." Now, as Pope Francis gets ready to step down, everyone's wondering, who's next? The Church is at a turning point, and it's a big deal for Catholics, and honestly, the whole world. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle from Manila is a top pick. With his heart for the poor and hands-on style, he's a lot like Francis, a perfect fit to keep the good vibes going. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle is ready to step up. He's a big thinker with a global view, and he's got tons of experience that makes him perfect for this moment. He's all about helping the poor, chatting with other faiths, and tackling stuff like climate change. Pretty much picking up right where Pope Francis left off. But let's be real, the road ahead is no picnic. During a visit to Manila, Tagle once said with a warm smile, "In their name, I welcome you to our country, to the city of Manila, and to the Cathedral Basilica of the Immaculate Conception. Welcome, benvenuto." That's the kind of guy he is, open, welcoming, and full of heart. Running the Vatican, though, that's a tricky puzzle. It's going to take smarts, guts, and a clear sense of purpose to sort out all the drama and disagreements. Pope Francis's resignation has left the Church at a big "what's next" moment, and whether Tagle becomes Pope or not, he's got a huge role in figuring out where things go from here. This new chapter kicks off after Pope Francis, who totally shook things up with his kindness, fairness, and love for the planet. His stepping down isn't just an ending, it's a fresh start. The next Pope's job: shape the Church for years to come. It's a massive deal, full of challenges, but also a chance to make things even better. The world's watching, wondering how the Church will handle today's messy stuff while sticking to its core: faith, hope, and love. Big questions are on the table. How can the Church shine bright in a divided world? How does it mix old traditions with new ideas? Pope Francis proved it can do amazing things, but it's got to keep changing to stay relevant. The next Pope, maybe Tagle, will need to keep that energy going, facing church drama and global problems with boldness and a big heart. Think interfaith teamwork, fighting for justice, or saving the planet. The Church can still inspire and bring people together. It's got a timeless mission, but it's got to fit the modern vibe. Right now, the Catholic Church is at a fork in the road. The choices coming up will decide if it stays a powerhouse of hope and healing, or not. With the right leader, it could do wonders for a world that really needs it. Oh, and if you enjoyed